Good evening, Bala. Welcome to the event, Leaders and Libraries. It's a pleasure to have you on this event. Before we get started and start speaking on this fantastic book that you have chosen, and I want to tell you, you are the only person who has picked up this book among all the 20 plus leaders who have already come on.
Right.
Very happy to talk about this particular book. Let me introduce you to the audience. So, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whichever part of the world all of you are who are going to see it later and listen to Bala. You have been listening to almost 24 guests in the last 2 months talking about one book that has inspired their journey. We have had people from HR, OD, L&D, business fraternity coming and chatting about this. Today we have yet another guest, Mr. Balaji Chandrakumar, fondly called as Bala in the HR fraternity. He's HR head of the group Goodhope Asia Holdings Limited, which is into the space of plantations, operations, and extraction business. Primarily, the industry is food ingredient industry, operating out of Srilanka, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, and Bala manages the entire HR, OD/L&D for the organization. Now, me and Bala go a long way. We know each other for almost a decade plus, and I see him as somebody who has got this amazing intuitive ability to look at problems and come up with quick solutions. And Daniel Kahneman talks about system 2 thinking in the book, thinking fast and slow. But Bala is somebody who uses system 1 thinking very effectively and also uses some amount of analysis, which is system 2, to come up with solutions. I've seen him as somebody who is absolutely intuitive and also an avid reader. In between, he had a pause because of his work, but I think he's picked it up once again. So Bala, it's a pleasure and honor to have you here. Welcome on board.
Thank you, Raju. It's actually a pleasure to see you back again in a forum like this. And I do recall the times in which we used to work together, the number of discussions that we have had. And in fact, thank you for all the good words that you spoke. I tend to believe that I would want to be more on the slow thinking side than on the fast thinking side. So that's something that I'm nurturing myself to start working on now. That's what I'm doing.
Lovely, right. Super. So before we get started into this book and kind of delve into it a little bit, tell me, Bala, how and when did your love for books start? And how long has this romance been?
I actually was quite late to start reading. So as a child, I never read books. So when people speak about Tinkle or Champak, I have never, even Ambulivama books also I have not read. So I've not read much. So my parents were very conservative and they've always wanted me to read, and reading essentially means studying your school books. So hence the academic orientation had been high, but never picked up to read. So it all started when I read Mills and Boons. So that's how actually the love for books actually started with Mills and Boons, and then slowly moving on to fiction and fiction from Jeffrey Archer, and then moving on. As you started moving towards your work and profession, one of the things that you realize is you need certain habits which would support you to do your job very well and also can shape the way you think. So hence I started picking up reading on self-development, started reading books on business management, and then thankfully I shifted my career from sales into HR consulting, and that compelled me to read a little more. Sure. So I did, but then that love for reading then started. So from that time onwards, I literally read almost everything that I get. But I'm more inclined naturally to go and pick up a book that has got an immediate application. So that is where my thinking fast comes in. So I look at what is it that I can quickly pick up and learn and implement. So that's something that's good. But both my daughters, I have 2 daughters, and both of them are avid readers.
Lovely. Avid readers, yeah. Lovely. So all that you said, one request, please do not go and tell the Mills and Boone story to the wives of your colleagues. Those guys are going to miss their dinner for that day. So please don't do that fundamental mistake and screw their life. All right. Super.
But I'm sure, many would have started from there, but then they may not want to comment about it. So it's fashionable to say that, I read P.G. Wodehouse, and P.G. Wodehouse was very nice, and then I did like the humor. But I did read P.G. Wodehouse. It took me to read it twice, to read any of the P.G. Wodehouse books and then understand what the humor is. It takes time. Yeah. And you don't relate to that humor, right? So, yeah.
True. So as you progress from the Mills and Boons and the Tinkles, and you went on to Jeffrey Archer's and Robert Tutton's of the World and management books. Tell me, Bala, how did the reader in you contribute towards making you the leader that you are today? Tell us something about that.
That's a very interesting question. The immediate response to me comes from, I'm not even thinking of myself, but then I was reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People long time ago, and and most of it was because we were in the people development sphere of work, and hence those learnings were very important for you to connect the dots. And my daughter, who was probably 9 or 10 that time, so she asked me, Dad, what are you doing? And then I just said that this is what the book talks about. And then she asked, can I read? She finished reading the book in 3 days flat. And then she came back and told me that, Daddy, these are the 7 habits of highly effective people. And she still holds the book. To me, I think that's the first influence that I've been able to make on my life. That remains in me even now.
Wow.
The second aspect of it is, I'm a person who looks at application of learning very quickly, like I told you earlier.
True.
So the moment I pick up academic knowledge straight from the book, so I try and experiment it, either at work or with people or with myself. I experiment that. And during the course of that execution, you tend to figure out that certain things work and certain things don't.
True.
And then you start thinking about why this book prescribes a particular method, and which is very well recognized across the world, and something very simple doesn't work with me. Then your appreciation towards placing a knowledge from a book in a context in which you work or you live or the way you are, at the context-based thinking, that refines your knowledge even better. So your application of learning becomes much sharper when you start looking at contextualizing learning.
Absolutely.
Right? So that has actually been extremely helpful. So and some of the learnings that I've had have really helped me extremely well in my consulting assignments. It has been extremely handy in my HR work. So and as you know, Rajiv, I'm not a rank HR guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm an engineer by qualification. So I was in sales and marketing, then was into consulting, then was heading a business, and from there today, if I'm in HR, the biggest value addition that I can do to my business is my ability to connect the dots between people and performance. So anything that's on people and performance connects to me, and anything that I can pick up on people and performance, I always go back and implement. So that's experimentation that I always
do. Absolutely. And when you said connecting dots, which is what I started the conversation complimenting you, that you have the ability to intuitively look at problems and solve it. And when you solve it, you look at multiple spaces and points in that particular problem and connect it together, right? Which probably comes out of your ability to not just be a reader of books, but also the implementer of books, which means you bring it from the pages onto the ground and kind of apply that, right? I think the transition is very important for all people, I guess, Bala. I don't know how many of them make that transition. So I'm very happy to hear that.
So I think that's a very, very interesting point, Rajiv. Reading a book for the purpose of reading a book, for the joy of reading a book, is different. I mean, there are books that you read for the joy of reading it. And they're exciting to read. It's joy of reading. Reading a book that can create an impact in the way you think are the books that's going to be most useful. And most people, in my experience, I've seen when they read a book, they look for quick solutions from a book. So can it fix something for you? A book doesn't fix anything. If a book can help you to think differently, then you are maximizing the purpose of a book.
Absolutely.
So if you can start thinking differently after reading the book, that is important. Absolutely. I believe that every book should help you to think differently.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember, Bala, once one of the intervention that I was doing for an organization in the retail space, I was talking to the CEO, and we had recommended 2 books on which the entire intervention was to be played out. And he said, Rajiv, these 2 books I have read and I've used it. I've got direct reportees, 11 of them. I've gifted this book as giveaways to them 10 months back. There are only 3 of them who have picked up the book and read it. They have not even applied. Others have not even read it. If you can get the transition made, what else can I ask for? I mean, I just remember that vividly in my head, just to say that Leadership Elements as an organization does that of translating readers of books into implementers of books. And it makes tremendous sense. right? Thank you. Thank you for that.
Just to add another point, and that's precisely the reason, Rajiv, you also find corporate training sometimes fail. Because people believe that corporate training, you send somebody for training and after that the person is transformed and then he starts performing. That belief is surely fading away. So I don't think people like me are believing that anymore.
Absolutely, we don't.
We are not believing that anymore. But if there is a session in which you go and you start thinking differently, I mean, that's what you want people to do, right? So you want people to think.
We want people to think, as Socrates himself said, I can make a man think, but I can't make a man act. And that statement is relevant now. It's going to be eternally relevant, isn't it? And the purpose of you and me talking today is to make those young minds listen to you and understand from your leadership journey, how did you apply this book, and go and think, right? Lovely. I'm so happy to have this conversation. So I'm going to take this to the next question, Bala. Tell me, out of all those books, why 4 Disciplines of Execution, the 4DX, picked up as the inspiring book for the day?
That's a question which needs some amount of self-revelation about who I am as a person as well. So I personally always believe that I'm spontaneous and like what you said, I'm quite spontaneous and intuitive and I want to do things right there and there. So I always believe that I should be better in the way I can plan and execute. So to that effect, so you have learned early in life to do a to-do thing, and then you choose your priorities and you work on all of that. But then I realized that it's not got to do with what you plan and do. It's got to do with how do you make your effort go in a direction that contributes to the maximum impact for you and the organization.
Right.
So when I read the preface of 4DX, the first thought that came to my mind is, wow, let's read this book. Because I've always believed that you can talk about strategies. You can talk about amazing strategies, 4-box strategies, 9-box strategies. I mean, you talk about colorful charts, strategy, all of it is great. But then at the end of it, what matters is only execution. And somebody once told me, strategy is nothing but execution. So what happens if execution fails is what I wanted to understand. And you do know what happens, right? So, and many of us are extremely busy in a day-to-day life. You're so busy, right? So you don't have time, you're busy, you're always busy. But then the question is, are we really contributing to something that's the most important factor for you? Right. So that was the impact that I had. That was one point that made an impact on me to pick up this book and read.
Absolutely. I mean, you're so right in saying this, Bala, because you and me, we have seen multiple leaders baffle and multiple organizations battle around translating that strategy into execution. That's that exact complete gap is. We go back to the start with why of Simon Sinek. The why is very clear for all of us, but if you don't get the bloody how, where are you going to get the result? So
exactly.
Struggle, that's where, right? I think this book is a phenomenal book for all young minds. And guys listening to Bala here, please go and pick this book. It's a marvelous book. Bala and me are people who believe in total quality management as a subject very, very strongly. And everything is measurable in this planet if you sit and really apply your head. And this is a book that can give you those techniques to put metrics to everything. So Bala, it's a lovely, lovely book. So I'm going to take you through discipline by discipline, and we spend some time on each of them, right?
Right.
Tell me, how do you look at these 4 things that the author is talking about? And he says, lack of clarity. I'm going to read this for you. Lack of clarity, number 1, lack of commitment, lack of collaboration, and lack of accountability are 4 things that prevent strategy from getting executed. So if these don't happen, the strategy gets executed from the other meaning of the word execution. Which are the 2 that you pick, Bala, with your experience as the most important? All 4 of them are.
To be the context in which I am right now. So when I see, I'm not just talking about the current organization that I work, but then having seen organizations in the past and then in general. If any HR person hears this word saying that, okay, so our teams are working in silos. Okay, if any HR person hears that, and if your response is that let's do a team building workshop, forget it. So then what you're doing is you are actually applying a band-aid on a fracture. So that's not going to help you at all. And it's a very commonly heard word, Rajiv. In the HR fraternity, when you work in an organization, it's a very common thing. Sometimes it can be organization-wide, or sometimes it can be department. I mean, it could be within a small unit or a department, but you hear that working in silo. People call it silo mentality. Okay, so they don't address the root cause issue, but then silo mentality does not. Second issue that you also hear is that the buck passing the buck never stops. So there are instances where you notice when you're in a meeting, when you're doing a review, you start with one person, so what happened? And then he says, okay, I'm waiting for him to give me. Right. So then what happened? So I'm waiting for her to complete something, so that will get done. So there's no end to that particular accountability. And how do you communicate it? Because I mean, it's all very valid and reasonable points that people are making. I mean, that's a reasonable excuse. I mean, I'm waiting for her to give me the data. I'm waiting for her to complete her part of the work. So that accountability is another major issue that you find across in teams. If the accountability is not very clear, that's another failure that happens. And then if you always come across, I'm addressing straight to HR.
Yeah.
If you always come across people come and tell you, boss, my performance has been great, but I'm not getting enough of career growth. I'm extremely hardworking and extremely committed, but I'm not getting promotions. My increments, my bonuses, or my performance incentives are not adequate. So it very clearly tells you there's a huge gap between what the employee perceives he or she has done in terms of the effort that they're putting in, as compared to what a management is seeing from the outcome perspective. So and that's a clear symptom of misalignment of objectives or priorities at that point in time. Being busy does not mean that you're successful. Right? So I think these are three common things that you find across, and most organizations have it. The extent of this problem in an organization, whether it is across the organization or it is in few pockets of the organization, or if it's only within the troubled units. But if you start from these 3 points, you'll usually come back to a good landing. You usually land up in a good landing.
Absolutely. So for the young minds who would be listening to you, what are the 2 things you would want them to pick up and start focusing on so that they can also move up in landing their strategies? Because a first-time manager also would have his own strategy or her own strategy, and a mid manager also would have, and a leader would have. So what's your input for that?
I would approach it slightly differently, Rajiv, if I may. Right? Rather than prescribing a strategy, or what strategies could work for you. So let's go to the fundamentals of what makes or what contributes to success or what contributes to performance. It's very simple, right? All of us know that we need to have our goals.
Yeah.
All of us know that we need to track what we are currently doing so that what gets measured is what gets done. Right. So you need to measure it. That's very, very clear. And we also know that as long as we are executing things properly, if you're getting a feedback on time, that's the best thing that that will help you to succeed. And these are very simple fundamentals. Now start from there. Start from there. Check within your team if everybody knows what is important for your department or function or within your team.
Right.
First, start from there. Second aspect is move on to say if the understanding of what is important is clear with all of them.
True.
So, I remember an assignment in which, a couple of years back, not a couple of years, almost a decade back. So, we started off talking to a band of senior leaders in an organization. And then the first thing that we started off with is by asking, so, what is the vision for your organization? And we did a quick study with all of them. There's in-depth interviews. We collected a lot of information. We came back. And then we are trying to assimilate them together and to say, okay, so what do people think is the organization, the vision of the organization? Random answers. Random answers. Now, while we are wanting to go and present it to the final presentation to the management of the organization, saying that, hey, this is what the team is saying, my only point there is, it's not about what people are saying. It's about what people are not saying. What people are not saying is one view of what the vision is of the company.
True.
And how can 15 people in the top management team have 15 different versions of a vision? So if that is not clear, my friend, whatever you try and do below that is not going to work.
I agree.
So start from there. So this is probably an example at a senior management level, but it's also applicable at smaller teams.
Sure.
It applies to small teams as well. Second thing is when people are aligned to what is required for the team or the unit. I'm just using the word team, saying that okay, it could be an organization or it could be as small as a small team. When people are aligned to what the important goals that you need to track and monitor are, then do they know how to do this particular task, assuming that they know what needs to be done, and how are you tracking their progress over a period of time, and what's the feedback that you're currently giving, and what are support mechanisms that you're currently putting in place, and how do you make performance visible for people, right? So this is where I have a big disconnect with most performance management systems. People tend to believe that performance management system, okay, we do twice a year, okay, half-yearly appraisal, okay, it's a HR activity, somebody sent me a mail and there's a format I need to fill up and I need to give it. If people use that as just a mere activity for doing something, as compared to making it meaningful, then we are burdening the system, you're burdening the HR system as well,
and the employees.
And at the end of it leaves people with a very bad taste. Yeah. So I think as an organization, if we are able to ensure that periodic feedback is happening to people, and if the managers can take responsibility for ensuring feedback on time, accountability would be a byproduct of it. So feedback and accountability go hand in hand, right?
Hand in hand, yeah.
Yeah. So that is something that can really work together. So I would encourage any youngster who wants to understand this a little more. I mean, while you read the book, your fundamentals are simple. You know what is there in the book. And that's nothing new that you do not know. But what you may not know is the complexity is actually in the word simplicity. It's simple, but it's not easy
to apply.
Yeah, it's not easy. So it needs thought. It needs application of mind. Yeah. And you cannot take the template and say, this is what I want to do. It does not work for you.
True.
So you may have to think through a little more clearly. Take the fundamentals very clearly, learn it for yourself, and then start implementing one by one.
True. And then contextualize it to your business scenario.
And to your personal situation, right? So you may want to ask them, so what is the wildly important goal for you as an individual? Yeah. So I think you may want to do that. That's a good starting point.
True. Thank you, Bala. That makes sense, because it's not about understanding strategy as a word. It's about picking up the ability to execute it through the tools that books talks about and bring it and play it in your business, and for which they understand, like you said, in the clarity of the vision that you need to have has to be tremendous. You need to be accountable to go and execute it. If all that is in place, then you would want to go and pick up this template and make some changes to the boundaries of the templates and try using it in your own business context, right? I think that's where the need for young minds to start looking at execution more important than strategy. And I mean, I have come from an automobile industry. I know, Bala, while making presentation to this Japanese professors, my goodness, we would go with the L&D strategy of 14, 15 slides. At the fourth slide, we'd be halted. Talk about the execution, leave the strategy. I mean, oh God, this man starts again. So it's crazy.
And honestly, there is so much of merit in that comment, right? So let's talk about execution. It's easy to talk strategy. I mean, somebody said, you get me to talk for 2 days, I can talk, but get me to talk for 10 minutes, that's difficult.
Absolutely.
So how do you condense something and then make, and the fundamental there, Rajiv, is how clear are you?
Yeah.
What is the clarity that you have? The purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. I think many HR people actually fail in that. Yeah. Because there is a rigmarole of set of activities that an HR team needs to do. And we fall into the trap without understanding why we are doing what we are doing. See, I mean, I've had friends, so come back and say, okay, the leading example of employee best practices, etc., is one of the leading IT organization in the US. So I don't want to name it, but then some of the practices are available open source, right? People come back and say, oh, that's a very simple tool. It's a very beautiful tool. I mean, their engagement model is very nice. The questions are very nice. Yes. The next question is, are you that company? Do you know the size of the company? What is your comparison in terms of size to that company to you?
True.
I think the key message that you need to learn from that company is everything is based on a scientific research. That is a key learning. Don't miss out the core learning and then take the frills of it. The template, the tools are great. That's fine.
Beautiful.
But then the core.
So that takes me to the next question also, Bala, when you said it's important to know the purpose, which is what you're talking about. And the whirlwind and the goal concept that this book talks about. How do you think a leader should start using the head to narrow down? And why is it so important? And tell me any technique that you used to always not get lost in the whirlwind, but always have the clarity of the goal and then intuitively find solutions.
Let me start by saying, most of us love, so as long as all of us believe, so the listeners would surely believe that you are a good talent, you're a capable talent, and as a capable talent, you always want to excel in whatever you currently do. And thereby, you are always compelled to do more. Okay, so if I can quote an anecdote that I heard from a friend of mine, this anecdote is of a person who was one of the thought leaders on scenario planning, original conceptualizers of scenario planning. So he gives this example, I believe. He walks up, there's a CEO who walks across his office, and then in the alley he finds, one person in one of the rooms, leaning back, eyes closed, leg on the desk, and then he's just in a deep thought. Or is he sleeping? Okay. He knocks the door, he opens and asks, "Hey, Jim, what are you doing?" He says, "I'm thinking." Okay. He just closes the door and he walks. He comes back during lunch and he finds him in the same position. He comes back during the evening, and finds him again in the same position. Then the question that he asks the CEOs who are in that room is, "What do you want to do with this guy?" The immediate response from most of them is, "Yes, I would want to terminate the guy. So I'm not paying him to sit down and dream and think, but then I want him to do work." So then the next follow-up question is, okay, if you're not having that person to think, who in your organization is thinking? So that's a very important question to ask about, right? Yeah. So what happens is, because we are a good talent, because we're committed to do excellent job, because we are really hardworking and we want to prove who we are, we try and do a lot of things. We try and take a lot of things on the plate. And every time we take a lot of things in your plate, you stretch yourself. And we take a lot of pride in stretching, our ability to stretch. We can work hard. You ask people in the interview. Yeah. So what are your strengths? I'm saying, I'm extremely hardworking. I stretch myself. I'm sharp. I'm intelligent. I can learn. Excellent. And then what you're saying is, I have mindwidth and the bandwidth to do more.
True.
And you're not willing to leave a space empty on your plate, right? So you want to fill that at that point in time. So keep yourself busy. Keeping ourselves busy is a first killer. So anytime you are getting into a meeting to discuss something extremely important, if you start that meeting saying that this is the reason why we are meeting here, and why is this important for us, and what will it help us achieve, and how would it benefit the larger organization or the larger purpose that you're up to, if you're connecting it to a larger purpose, then what happens is you suddenly recognize that today the work that I'm currently doing, how is it adding value to the larger purpose, to me, to the team, to the organization? The moment you ask that question, I think a lot of it can fall in place. To answer that question, to ask that question, not answer the question, to ask that question, a leader needs to have tremendous clarity in his head as to what is extremely important. So that's what the book defines it as: wildly important goals.
Correct.
And what are those activities that can derail you very easily?
Yeah.
But what are those few activities that can give you the maximum impact? It's the Pareto.
Correct.
Maximum impact areas is what you should focus on. What are those areas? You need to be clear about it. Absolutely. So if you start filtering from what needs to be on your plate and what should not be on your plate, that's a good beginning to start with.
I like that the way you said that filtering it on the plate is so important, Bala. You're so right, and Brain Tracy talks about the eat the frog very strongly, right? We have multiple frogs on the plate. We don't even know which is the ugly frog that needs to be eaten up. Right? We have every frog hopping off from every direction of the plate, and we're figuring out what to do. But I think it's tremendous in what you're saying, Bala, because if that clarity in the head of the leader is not there, he or she is never going to be able to leverage on the collective genius of the organization. That's going to be impossible. Right? It's one mind not having clarity going to translate into no clarity in multiple minds. Very, very important. You're so right.
A lot of practical, real instances you will find where you have a very enthusiastic team member, okay, who's raring to do something, comes up with a brilliant idea. The idea is great. I mean, it's amazing. It's super, really nice. And then you want to encourage that person. But then you need to have the heart to actually sit up and say, hey, that's a great idea. But tell me, how is it going to be contributing to your objectives right now? How is it going to contribute to a larger organization?
Right.
How do we do that? So if you can connect it back, so then people understand, okay, so there's no point of doing something that you really, really are passionate about alone, but which does not meet a purpose. Of course, when you can't work with a passion, you need to find those passion areas that can contribute to a purpose, right? If that connection can be established, and that's the role of a manager. You need to know what is the person's passion, what does he or she love to do, and what is the purpose for the organization, and how can you bring both of them together. Yeah. If you can bring that together, then there you have the success.
That's beautiful, Balaji.
I mean, and in the book, there's a very interesting thing that one statement in the entire book that actually should be is, it said, please ask yourself, what is that one important goal? If not achieved, anything else that you do does not matter.
It's a powerful one. It slaps you like anything on both your cheeks.
and then you just sit back and look at, okay, so what did I do today? So I've been absolutely busy. So how much of the work that I actually could? And then you realize, okay, hey, you know what? I mean, there is so much. And the most important thing is what you're doing is not useless work. You're doing meaningful work. Yeah. And though they are operational work for sure. But then is your mind focused on just those critical areas that you need to focus on, or is it like a spray gun? I mean, are you looking at everything around you? Yeah. So, and we know by practical experience that we are only capable of focusing on few important things that you want to do at any point in time.
Absolutely.
So in the name of multitasking, multi-threading, sometimes we have corrupted our own minds in terms of doing many things at the same time.
I know. Viktor Frankl, as part of his research and all that, says we are living in an epidemic of multitasking. And very true. Very, very true. Right?
And you surely need, in that epidemic, you surely need a mask to keep your mouth shut and a social distancing for you to not jump into something.
Good one, Bala. Very, very well. I like that. Honestly, Bala, you made tremendous sense when you connected the passion to purpose. So the connection of these two P's is absolutely so important. A leader alone can do it because he or she is standing at a balcony and having a balcony view of the entire organization. No other person at a second level, third level can ever do that. So I think that's marvelous thought process. This takes me to the next question, Bala, that do you think, and I'm going to ask you a closed-ended question, answer is obviously yes. Do you think a leader should start quickly moving from a conventional thinking to a 4DX kind of a thinking, training the head to start thinking that way? And if yes, why should somebody start doing it early in their career of growth?
Again, Rajit, I think, like you said, the answer is obviously yes. But then I would qualify that. I think most leaders know. Most leaders know that they need to do this 4DX, whatever. I forget the book. They know these fundamentals. They know these priorities. They know it for sure. Most leaders know.
Yeah.
But two things happens to a leader. There is a pressure from the business that he needs to achieve a few things. And there is also a set of people that he needs to inspire, guide, and drive along with him to achieve a specific outcome.
True.
So that creates the tension in the leader. Okay. So now sometimes when your team is not strong enough or good enough or not competent enough, your time for development is an investment that you make for the future, but it does not address solutions for you now.
Correct.
So hence what happens is many leaders, because they're compelled to deliver certain things, and it could be financial compulsion, it could be just performance compulsion, customers compulsion, any of the compulsions that you might have. You try and look at, because the leader needs to demonstrate improvement, right? Otherwise his team is going to be demotivated. So what they do is they move very quickly to address certain problems. And in many occasions that problem tends to get addressed by top down rather than bottom up. And bottom up is great when you have time to do it. But top down is an easy approach. You push it through and things go, you get an outcome.
Yeah.
But whether it's sustainable is a question, right?
That's a
so
question.
Then you need to evaluate your question into two dimensions. One, from do people know these principles? I surely believe most of them know, or if not all of them know. They do know. Commonsensically, they know, and that's why they are leaders, right? Otherwise, they would not have grown to be leaders.
Absolutely.
So they are leaders only because of this.
I agree.
Do they have patience to do certain things in a very methodical way? Sometimes people do not have. That's based on a business context. That's based on a business context. Second aspect is 4DX, implementing 4DX principles needs you to change the way you think.
Agree.
And that's not easy.
True. It's time consuming as well.
So Rajiv, you and I have met so many leaders. Okay, so during our consulting assignments, and the first thing when you go and speak to them, and when they talk about performance management, and then you say you need to measure these things. So, and then you actually go and look at what the measures are. Invariably, you find what people are getting reviewed is still on lag measure, right?
Correct.
Invariably, or you always find it to be extremely cluttered.
True.
So long list of cluttered items, and then weightage is given. That you make things a little more complicated.
Yeah.
But these things happen not because leaders do not know, but leaders get derailed. They get derailed in the daily pressures. So that's the section, Rajiv, where I think more than people starting to do something, in my opinion, I think they need to refresh their learning more frequently. Any leader who...
If you can pause you for a minute, isn't it a very practical, natural, systemic problem?
Why do you say that?
For the system around, the environment around to derail the leader, because moving from a conventional to 4DX needs investment of time, effort, money, and going to be long. And there's an urgency to really long.
See,
what should we do there?
Yeah, so I think the beauty of this 4DX principle, if you really, really understand, it need not be a long run process.
Okay.
All that it tells you is pick on the most important thing for you and act on it now. So it says that your ability to pick on what is important. I mean, so leaders sometimes get really dazzled by, problems coming from multiple directions. Okay, it could be people issues, it could be process issues, it could be a government taxation issue, it could be a cash flow issue, it could be a profitability issue, customer issues, system issues. You have so many issues, right? Now, to address all of them, you don't have a bandwidth to do all of it.
Yeah.
But your ability to choose what is the most important thing and then focusing on that and driving it would help you to do that, can help you to focus better.
Beautiful.
So, and I personally think leaders, all of the leaders know, but I think leaders need to take a break, sit back, and reevaluate what they're doing and what's working for them and what's not working for them.
I agree.
And then, once they take that, I call it a creative break. I mean, take a creative break, so look at what you're currently doing. And sometimes reading a book like a 4DX only tells you, hey, you think you're a great leader, you think you're fantastic, you think you're doing an amazing job, but Bhaga, can you stop by, think, reflect? So there are areas that you could do better. So you're capable of doing much better than what you're currently doing. So it's a slap on the face, like you said. So it will get you to rethink. It will get you to rethink and rework. So, I mean, how many companies follow dashboards, right? I mean, we have all seen colorful dashboards, multiple dashboards. But then the actual true meaning of a good dashboard, make it simple, make it easy, make it visible, so people can understand and digest. So sometimes dashboards are so complicated.
You're right, Bala. I mean, I agree with you, because even if it takes, let's say, a month or 2 months of thinking with the team and putting this 4DX concept, institutionalizing it in the organization, I think that 30 days or 60 days of time is well invested, because after that, it's going to move so quick and easy and smooth for you. You only need oiling at different times. You wouldn't need anything else, because you will never see derailment happening at all. But the investment of 30 days, 60 days is where the leader kind of, should I not? I agree. Thanks for bringing that perspective, Bala. I'm going to take you to the next one, right? Now, when you do this, make a move from a conventional to a 4DX. No, the leader can't do it all alone, and he's not the Avenger any which ways, right? No, he or she has to take the entire team below and move with all the Wonder Womans of the world, Captain Americas of the world, and Iron Mans of the world, and get it delivered. Now, get all these characters are also very good. The problem for them is they don't see it as organizations win. They don't see it as the leaders win. They see it as their win. For them, their own win is the most important, right? Now, if that is what is the focus for them, it's a little different to what the leader is thinking. Context. Why do you think keeping a scoreboard is very important to motivate those team members to keep performing and staying on course? Because for them, they give a damn to what the leader wins. They give a damn to what happens to the organization. Did I win?
I think it's an interesting thing, right? I've seen personally the success of a team is much higher when everybody works on a common outcome that you want.
True.
So, and all of us know that when all of us are aligned to one thing that we want to achieve, the team comes together, and then they really put their effort together because they all know what they want to achieve. They see. So, what a scorecard essentially tells you is, are you in the right track or not at any given point in time?
Okay.
But the moment if you have designed your scorecard properly, which has both your lead and lag measures in it, okay, where lead measures are the one that you're currently working on.
Correct.
If you've defined your lead measures properly, and if they are truly influenceable by those role holders, and if they can predict success, and if they are measurable very clearly, and if those metrics are showing improvement on a day-by-day basis, it tells you that you're successful.
Yeah.
You're making progress. And nothing motivates a team than demonstrating progress.
I agree.
And that motivation level will drive people to perform better.
Okay.
The lag measures will take time to achieve, but fine. But at least you have had the small wins.
Yeah.
And then you're going on. And obviously, we all know the moment when we play a cricket match. So if you play a small over match and somebody's keeping a score, so all of us are more focused on achieving, succeeding in. So I think that's how a scoreboard really helps. And if it's simple, easy to interpret, great.
So you're saying a scoreboard keeping is not a myopic way of looking at it. It definitely generates more energy and motivation in team members to perform, right?
Of course.
But as long as it's aligned to the organization's numbers and those scoreboards, there are higher scoreboards above that person, right?
Correct. But see, whatever scoreboard that you do, will have to contribute to a particular lag. If it's all lead indicators, it has to contribute to a lag indicator.
Correct.
Right. So if you can demonstrate lead indicator movement, imagine. So I'm a person who's currently doing a particular task. Okay, and if I'm doing a task and that's going to contribute to scorecard improvement, when I see that, I know that my work contributes to the particular improvement. And if it's not seen, if I'm not able to see improvement, then it tells it, okay, I'm not doing the right job. So it automatically corrects you. And because it's a scorecard, which everybody can see, it's like you're the most important batsman, middle order batsman who's gone into the pitch right now. And everybody knows that you're important to perform. And if you don't perform well, everybody also gets right. It's a lot of moral compulsion on
Absolutely. People. In fact, it's so right, Bala, because when the graph moves up or moves down in terms of performance and the person is able to see it, the acknowledgement, recognition for the work is automatically happening through those numbers. Exactly. Right? And as Lencioni says, one of the issues of team problems is a team member not getting acknowledged and recognized. So you don't need the manager to go and tap it. The number is anyway showing, graph is going up, super. Revenue is going up, the cost is coming down, fantastic. What else?
And when I'm seeing a scorecard in which Rajiv's effort is showing us growing, as a colleague, there are only two responses for me. One is I'm jealous of you. So I am saying, okay, I can't allow Rajiv to perform better than me, and hence I need to put in more effort. Okay, or the thing is that I walk up to you and say, Rajiv, great job.
Yeah.
So any which way it's healthy. So the competition can be healthy, and then it also brings in camaraderie if you and I are working on the same objective.
Absolutely.
So then it is useful.
Absolutely. And any which way it would be connected because interdependency within teams and outside teams are heavy in our space of operation, right? Beautiful. Beautiful. So that takes me to the next one, Bala, to ask you, how did you successfully establish this, which I think is tough, and I have battled in my own role as a head of L&D because I succeeded with my domestic team. I failed miserably with my international team when I was managing the L&D for an organization. How do I build this accountability cadence in a team? What are quick 2 or 3 tips that you would want to give, Bala?
I can actually talk about areas that probably I think I could have done better. So, I can't say that I've done everything right and it's working the perfect way for me, but I'm also learning.
Sure.
So I'm also implementing, experimenting and learning as well, even now. But I've seen instances where when you need to drive change, right? First thing that you do is you meet regularly. You minute every discussion point in terms of what my deliverable is by this particular point in time, and all those outcomes are very, very clearly measured. And then you meet again, you come back and say that this is what I've done, this is what I could not do, I need support, I need to. And that meetings brings a very interesting perspective, because you are presenting to a management, broader set of audience.
True.
In which you're saying that I can deliver this by this particular time, or I need support, and you become absolutely accountable for the outcome that is supposed to be generated.
Correct.
And it also gives visibility to the management in terms of the effort that goes into this. And if you need support, or the team can actually tell you that, Balaji, though you are saying that this is going to work this way, that could be a problem. Why? Because there's a dimension that you're not seeing, which probably somebody else is seeing, or somebody who's superior to you is seeing. That adds a lot of value addition.
Right.
So establishing that accountability and frequent meetings, but not laborious long meetings where you switch off at some point.
Quick reviews are good.
Absolutely important. And minuting those reviews and reviewing the minutes of the reviews is extremely important.
I know. In that way, I would take a back step. Before minuting it, the challenge with organization that I've seen that I work for is, they start off saying every Tuesday we'll have a review at 9. That happens for 6 Tuesdays. The 7th Tuesday passes. The 9 a.m. also passes. The review doesn't happen. It is passed off. So it is so tough to stay the course, right? So every Tuesday, the calendar has to be blocked for everybody, saying, let the heavens fall, the review would bloody happen.
Right. Absolutely with you. And so one of the failures that I have had is that. So wherein you sat down, you said, okay, guys, we need to do this review. We're going to be doing periodically, block your calendar, all done. Planning is beautiful. First 2 meetings have happened. But then the third meeting, the lack of focus on what is important at that particular point in time, derailed, and then this entire meeting structure gets derailed. So your ability to quickly revert, fall back, and then realign, that's going to be important. But that has happened to me. I've had that issue in the past.
Right.
It's a very important thing. So you realize that it's not that easy to execute, right? So it needs tremendous amount of discipline.
Tremendous. It all starts with what you said initially, Bala, that clarity in every team member's head of the larger purpose and vision. If that is not instilled and installed clearly, your reviews are not going to happen the way we want it to happen anyways.
Absolutely.
From here. Because after a time, something else comes in, then the leader tries to insert this, the management asking the isko bhi andar dalte hain, then somebody says isko bhi andar dalte hain, to isko dalte, usko dalte ke chakkar mein half the time you'll ask kisko dalna hai, kisko nahi dalna hai.
Yeah. So that surely happens. And then the other biggest challenge that you will find also is what you set out as your most important goals changes based on priorities.
It does.
Right. So, and if that is changing, so you should be so nimble enough to realign your entire team and things to do. If not, you very quickly fall into the firefighting mode. And once you get into the firefighting mode, it's very difficult for you to pull out, to disengage into the fire, and then really, it takes the time. It takes a lot of effort to disengage from that.
Lovely.
So, I've gone through that, so I know the pain of it.
Beautiful. I've seen organizations where they have had this entire plan done for the entire year, but they are very nimble and aware of the fact that business changes. So every 4 months, they would come back and review on the entire plan that has been put in place to figure out, are we good for the next 4 months, or do we need to make some adjustment to it?
Right.
Such organizations are very progressive. And they 90% they reach the target that they want to reach, because the graphs are going to get green, the red are going to become green and amber, and all this stuff would happen.
Right.
I think it's also depends on how mature and what level the organization is wanting to move, and which can be led by leaders at your level
And that's a very important concept, Rajiv, when you specifically are talking about an organization that's in change. As an organization, if you're in change, your frequency of your reviews and the depth of reviews and what you review is extremely vital. Otherwise, it's absolutely possible for you to derail.
Absolutely, you're right. You're right. In fact, Bala, when you must have read the book Built to Last and also Good to Great. It classically Built to Last says that such organizations who stayed on with this course of review and accountability stood for 100 years plus. Right. And it's end of the day, as you said, the books can't come and implement. The leaders have to go and implement it. So beautiful, Bala. Thank you so much for. I'm going to ask you the last question, which is a little tough, but let me hear it from you. This mystical word or mythical word, you want to call it whatever, culture of execution excellence. How the hell do I get it into the organization? Give us some inputs.
See, I mean, execution is hard. I mean, so it's you can see execution. Culture is machine.
Right.
So it's too soft, and so you can change that culture by the way you define it. So the very word of the culture can be redefined. But then, for simplicity's sake, let's understand that culture is nothing but a collective set of behaviors displayed by a set of people in a team or in the organization, right?
Yeah.
So a culture of an organization is a concept. It's not a reality. It's a concept.
Right.
That is continuously evolving. Right? So for it to become higher than culture, is for it to become a character of the organization,
Beautiful.
You need to be able to demonstrate certain attributes as an organization, everybody in the organization, repeatedly over a period of time.
Right.
And keep repeating that and not compromise those attributes that you did that contributes to what you define as culture. If you don't compromise on that, and if you have this unflinching view of this is how I will do, this is how everybody in my company will do, then if you keep repeating that and if you stand by, then the culture actually gets built up. Like, for example, Tatas. There are a few traits about Tatas that people talk about, any given point in time people talk about, right?
Absolutely.
And the reason why they talk about Tatas is because of it. I've never worked in Tatas, but then just that when people talk about Tatas, I've had friends who have worked with the Tata groups, and they're so loyal to that company even after they've left the company. And they take pride in saying that they're from Tatas, right?
Absolutely.
So how did this company manage to do this? They've repeated that over and over and over and over again.
I agree.
And every given possibility, they have also demonstrated that this is the value that we have for our people or for the culture or for our society. They've demonstrated that.
Yeah.
So in an organization, culture of performance execution, right, comes from a multitude of systems and processes that works together. And as long as I'm assuming that all of them should talk to each other.
Right.
For example, just a goal-setting activity in an organization. That's a sanctum sanctorum act.
True.
That is important to have an impact. If that's clear, I think then rest of your game is easier to do. So that's clear. And you ensure that people are aligned to that goal. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do, and people have the right skills, competencies to be able to perform on the particular job, and they're capable of delivering it. And you know what are the small measures that you currently have, how do you do, and what is it that you want to measure, and how are you influencing those measures. People are tracking and monitoring this for a period of time.
Correct.
And accountability, like what you said, is clearly established for people. And if we repeat this again and again,
that's the key.
That becomes a habit. That habit is not as an activity that you do every year. I need to do goal cascading. I need to do review, half-yearly reviews, annual reviews. I need to have a performance appraisal form. If you forget that, if you can repeat the disciplines of this execution that we're talking about for a couple of cycles, it becomes a habit and that becomes intuitive with you. And if that is encouraged by your leaders, I'm assuming that all leaders also think the same way.
They have to.
And that is encouraged by your leaders. And if the more and more they encourage people who think this way, who are demonstrating better results for their teams, and those people are given more prominence for growth and prominence in terms, because I'm obviously assuming that they're performing better.
Correct.
So I use them as case studies or examples for others to learn from.
That's
reinforce. And whenever somebody is making a mistake, I think quickly correct it. I said, guys, this is not working. I think you're scattered. I mean, you're doing too many things. I think people need support when they are scattered, when they're doing too many things. Quickly as a leader, move in and say, hey, buddy, I think you're doing a lot of things. Appreciate that. You're extremely hardworking. But let's talk about smart working. So I think this is what we would want you to focus on. Can we focus on this? And if you need to focus on these areas, what are the things that you think you should be doing? And what is it that you want to measure to show that this is the improvement that you're going to be showing? And why don't you track it? And why don't we meet on a weekly, daily, whatever basis that we want to talk about? And if you make that as a habit, then you have a fair degree of success. I mean, you have a higher chances of having a better.
Absolutely. I mean, what you said makes sense. I think the only word I pick up from that elaboration that you gave was consistency. Multiple cycles, right? And the beauty of this book is it's a beautiful combination of the right set of behaviors that needs to be consistently displayed over a right set of defined processes that needs to be consistently used.
Absolutely.
Right? And if it happens for a couple of years, then a new person like Rajiv, let's say, joins your organization. I know that in the month of April to mid of May, the entire target setting for the company would happen, whatever it be. So when I sit for the next year, from the January onwards, I'm breaking my head to figure out by April, Bala is going to ask me for the dashboard, let me be ready. And we won't say that ye saal hum log June mein kar lete hain. That doesn't happen. It happens by mid of May, it happens by even mid of May. That needs tremendous amount of discipline, I think.
And all across. So
all that discipline.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just qualifying for what you're saying. When you say discipline is not about people discipline alone. So it's a discipline of systems, process, inter-team relationships.
True.
I mean, it's discipline in every aspect of it.
Yeah.
So, and the discipline of choosing the top goals for the organization and telling people that this is what is most important. And the book was very, very, it brought a very, very interesting point, and all of us know SMART goals, and so we have spoken about it enough number of times. The book just says a very interesting thing. It says that, okay, you'll have a from goal, you'll have a to goal by when. So there cannot be anything more smart than that.
Yeah.
From point A to point B by when. So I don't think there's anything more smart than that. I mean, so sometimes doing some of this can be very simplistic. It could be very, very simple things. Right? So I think that application of simplicity, application of consistency, and getting people to feel accountable, ensuring clarity in everything that we currently do, doing few but doing the most critical. I think those are certain habits which I think
Absolutely.
are going to be very important for any organization to succeed.
Absolutely. I think this book has got enough and more of pearls of wisdom like this as people can read through these pages. So that brings me to the last question, Bala, and I know you for a decade plus and you carry a lot of experience on the international platform, national platform, consulting space, corporate space, sales, HR. If you're going to put all that together and kind of distill it and filter it and get a glass of wisdom, from that, what are two laser sharp advices that you would want to give to the young minds today? Laser sharp 2.
One, be absolutely clear about what is the goal that's most important for you to focus on.
Right.
Your starting point is there. Be absolutely clear and be ruthless to filter out certain things that you would really, really like to do, but then not essentially which will contribute to organization. So absolutely something that's important for the organization, which you must do, without which nothing will succeed. Nothing else matters, right? So I think that would be first thing.
Number one.
Second thing is, if you are not bringing in clarity if you're not able to demonstrate clarity in terms of your achievement, by showing your efforts and hence outcomes, which in other words, the book talks about lead and lag indicators, right?
Right.
And I'm comparing, it's a scorecard. A scorecard need not be what we visualize in corporate organizations where there's a huge TV which has got graphs. No, I mean, not that. It could be a simple scorecard that you track for yourself. If you do not have that clarity of saying that this is the work that I'm currently doing, these things will contribute to this outcome, then hence I'm tracking my contribution towards the larger goal by doing A, B, C, and this is where I've progressed today, this is where I'll do tomorrow, this is where I'll be day after tomorrow by end of the week. If you do not have that clarity, so there is a higher possibility that you're going to continue to be extremely busy, not essentially successful.
True.
So these are the two habits that I think is extremely important at an individual level.
Very good. So tremendous clarity first, and then also having clear metrics and measurement clarity in your head of how you're going to achieve that.
Visualization of the clarity.
True.
Tremendous clarity, visualization of the clarity for you and the other people around. And if you're a leader who's driving an organization, I would recommend your biggest challenge is going to be in terms of how do you build this habit of execution excellence with your people is going to be the most priority for you. And think about what is it that you're doing right now, which probably you're spending a lot of time and effort, which drains you, which stresses you, which probably if you drop and if you have to do something else, it's absolutely important for the organization, and prioritize your time and effort there. Rest of it you already know, you will succeed for sure.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you so much for that. It was lovely having a conversation with you on this book, and thank you for explaining it the way you always do it in your own inimitable style. Thank you for that, Bala. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
I love the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bala, and look to see you soon. Sorry?
I said thank you for the opportunity to have this.
Anytime. You should have come in early on, but we couldn't do it for whatever reason. But I'm happy we could do it on the 30th of October as we are almost closing the month. But thank you so much for being there. Look forward to fly down and see you as things open up. Take care.
Sure. Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.